We have a huge update regarding Hurricane Melissa, as it has now officially become a Category 5 hurricane to the south of Jamaica and is unfortunately forecasted to make landfall as a Category 5 in Jamaica tomorrow. This is going to bring catastrophic impacts, including storm surge, hurricane force winds, and on top of that, catastrophic flooding, unlike what we've ever seen before out of a hurricane like this in Jamaica. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about Hurricane Melissa and what has changed in the forecast over the last 24 hours. We'll begin with what is happening with Melissa right now, and this hurricane just looks off the charts crazy right now. This is one of the most symmetrical eyes that you will ever see. It is a very organized and healthy Category 5 hurricane. It has been drifting to the west over the last few days, and it is about to make a big turn to the north as it heads up towards Jamaica later today and also into tomorrow. Major impacts are expected across all of Jamaica, including hurricane force winds, which will be widespread. We also have the threat of storm surge as high as 15 feet along the coastal regions, and then rainfall as much as 30 to 50 inches of rain could fall out of Melissa over the next 72 hours, as an extremely dangerous hurricane will continue to track to the north. And one concerning trend I do want to point out about Hurricane Melissa is that it is tracking further to the west than initially forecasted, which means that we will likely see a landfall somewhere in extreme southern or even southwestern Jamaica tomorrow, which does mean that the worst of the impacts are going to be felt across almost all of Jamaica. Initially, we were thinking it might make landfall further to the east, closer to Kingston, but in this case, since it's going to be making landfall further to the west, we have the most intense side of the hurricane on the east side, and therefore we are going to see substantial impacts across a larger chunk of Jamaica. And one thing I also want to point out with Hurricane Melissa is that it is very healthy right now, and this is not a good thing for Jamaica, because notice how much deep convection is currently going up all around our eye of the hurricane. This is where we have moderate to heavy rainfall falling consistently, and unfortunately this is a very slow moving hurricane, so as it continues to get closer and closer to Jamaica, we are going to see much heavier rainfall make its way into Jamaica. Even right now, we've been seeing some moderate to heavy rain bands. They've not been super consistent, but this is the beginning of a catastrophic rainfall event that is going to only get worse today and tomorrow. And unfortunately, I have some very bad news for Jamaica. Melissa is now forecasted to make landfall in Jamaica tomorrow as a Category 5 hurricane. This has never happened in the history of tracking hurricanes that we've had a Category 5 hurricane even within a certain mileage of Jamaica, and we are about to see that broken, we think, by tomorrow, because over the next 24 hours we are expecting that Melissa will continue to lift to the north as an intense Category 5 hurricane. The National Hurricane Center thinks that this will peak at intensity by around lunchtime today, with winds as high as 165 miles per hour and maximum wind gusts around 200 miles per hour. As this approaches Jamaica, it is forecasted to remain a Category 5 hurricane up until landfall Tuesday morning, which right now we think landfall is going to happen somewhere between Kingston back through areas near Lucia sometime around 7 to 8 tomorrow morning. So this is going to be a morning landfall for Jamaica. Keep in mind, the worst of the impacts will begin before the morning hours. We are expecting the impacts to really ramp up throughout the daytime today. As we go into later tomorrow, around 1 o'clock or so, lunchtime on Tuesday, this will remain a Category 4 hurricane as it passes through the northern side of Jamaica with significant storm surge, catastrophic rainfall, and hurricane force winds continuing. And then on Wednesday, we are expecting this to make landfall again, this time in Cuba as a Category 3 hurricane. And then by Wednesday afternoon, this will be down to a Category 2 hurricane, most likely making a third landfall in the Bahamas. And then beyond this, we could even see a landfall back up in Bermuda as we go into Thursday. So in all reality, there is a possibility that Melissa makes landfall in 4 different countries within 72 hours, which is already rare enough on its own. So this is a hurricane that we've got to be taking seriously, especially if you are in Jamaica over the next 24 hours. Same thing back over in eastern Cuba. Even though it's not going to be a Category 5 up there, a major hurricane is still going to be very impactful. Even areas like Haiti and the Dominican Republic, where direct landfall is not forecasted, we are still expecting the threat for some major flooding. Now, for just a moment, I want to take us back into the history books, because we've only had 4 Category 4 hurricanes ever come within close range of Jamaica, one of which did make landfall. Is back over in Kingston. That was Gilbert in 1988. This is a different hurricane, though, that we're talking about with Melissa. This one's coming out of the south, which none of these, by the way, came out of the south. All of them went from east to west. Instead, this is coming directly out of the south, and what's going to happen is that we do think this will be the first ever Category 5 hurricane to make landfall in Jamaica. Even if it were not to make landfall as a Category 5, this would be by far the most intense hurricane when it comes to wind speed speeds and pressure to go right over the country of Jamaica. So this is something that you need to take seriously if you're not already in Jamaica. Now let's talk more about the timing and the impacts of Hurricane Melissa, beginning with our future radar. This is what it looks like this morning. A very intense hurricane. Pressure is now well under 930 millibars, and it will only continue to intensify throughout the daytime today. I honestly think the peak intensity of Melissa will not be until this evening to the south of Jamaica. I also want to point out the eye and the eye of wall are going to be still very far south of Jamaica, so the worst of the impacts are still ways away. However, we are going to continue to see these outer bands pushing into Jamaica. We could even see a low-end tornado risk exist in far eastern Jamaica this evening. And then eventually into the overnight hours, this hurricane will continue to move to the north, and the HAFS-A model, which is a hurricane model, actually has this intensifying further before landfall as we go into early Tuesday morning as it approaches Jamaica as a very intense hurricane down to around 916 millibars. If this were to happen, we'd be talking about a possibility of a Category 5 at upwards of 165 mile per hour sustained winds. So it could intensify further. Tuesday morning is when it makes landfall, and this is where the big question is. Where in Jamaica is it going to make landfall? We would prefer it making landfall further east of Jamaica if it were to make landfall at all in Jamaica. However, it looks like it might split the difference. It might just be dead center in the middle, because what's going to happen now is that the worst of the impacts out of Melissa are going to be mostly from central Jamaica, and even in some of the higher elevations, all the way through Kingston and all the way to the east coast. So unfortunately, areas in western, central, and eastern Jamaica are going to feel significant impacts from this. But in all reality, if this were to make landfall in central Jamaica, the worst of the impacts will basically be felt across all of Jamaica. That is mainly because this eye is going to go try to split the difference right through the middle, and we have a big eye wall here. So that is a big problem here Tuesday morning. By around 9 to 10 o'clock on Tuesday, the eye of the hurricane will be all over Jamaica. We got very high winds that'll be ongoing across a very large chunk of Jamaica, with life-threatening winds upwards of 100 to 150 miles per hour on the table throughout the morning hours on Tuesday. By lunchtime, we're expecting this to start to move out of Jamaica. We will continue to see very heavy rainfall and high winds at least through about 3 or 4 o'clock, and then eventually, as we go into Tuesday evening, things will start to calm down a little bit. I think we're still going to have pretty rough conditions. The winds will probably still continue to stay high. While all this is happening, this will eventually move to the northeast towards Cuba, and we're going to start to see some impacts ramping up in Cuba as we go into Tuesday evening, with hurricane force winds reaching far eastern Cuba and heavy rainfall continuing in western Haiti, where we could see some significant flooding. Eventually, as we go into late Tuesday, early Wednesday, this will be moving right over Cuba. This is mainly going to be during the overnight hours, and then Wednesday morning, this will be approaching the Bahamas, perhaps making a third landfall. And then as we go into late Thursday is when this will be racing up towards Bermuda, where we could see another very close appearance of this trying to make a fourth landfall as it approaches Bermuda. Now, one of the worst impacts that we are going to see from Melissa are the wind speeds, and they are going to be really ripping as we go into overnight hours tonight into tomorrow morning. Right now, we're already seeing wind gusts across Jamaica around 30 to 45 miles per hour, but it's going to get a lot worse, because as we go into Tuesday morning, those wind gusts across all of Jamaica will be approaching hurricane force winds. And then on top of that, anywhere in the purples and also in any of these other colors that are closer to the eye of the hurricane, that is going to be upwards of Category 3 plus wind gusts that we are going to be talking about, which means exceeding 110 miles per hour here across southern Jamaica by as early as 4 to 5 in the morning on Tuesday, which is obviously extremely dangerous. As we go into Tuesday morning, the eye is moving right over Jamaica, where basically all of Jamaica will still be dealing with hurricane force wind gusts, and the worst of it will likely be from about Kingston back through areas in southwestern Jamaica. This entire corridor here is going to be dealing with wind gusts exceeding 100 miles per hour. By late Tuesday morning into early afternoon, this will start to move to the northeast. We'll still have very high winds across areas in northern Jamaica, and then eventually as we go into late Tuesday evening, the winds are going to pick up substantially in eastern Cuba, with wind gusts peaking upwards of 100 to 120 miles per hour before eventually going through Bahamas late Wednesday. Another thing I do want to point out is that storm surge is a huge concern right now. If you are right along the coastline, you should be evacuating inland right now. The reason why is because with all these winds that are very intense, we're going to have very strong offshore flow, which means that we have south to north winds that are going to be pushing tons of water towards the coastline, especially near Kingston and right into the bay, which means that we could have upwards of 10 to 15 feet of storm surge, which means the water is going to rise substantially right along the coastline. Additionally, if you're on the northern side of Jamaica, very strong winds will lead to storm surge up here. We'll likely have at least some storm surge in western Jamaica, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as significant here if the eye makes land landfall in southern Jamaica. But no matter what, if you are along the coastline, please get away from it, because if you don't, you are going to be risking your entire life. This is a very dangerous situation that we are talking about in Jamaica. Hurricane Melissa is not only going to be historic because of the intensity. Another reason why is because of how much rain it is going to dump, especially in both Haiti, also Cuba, and Jamaica, where we are expecting a widespread swath here of at least a foot of rain to fall anywhere from eastern Cuba back into far western Haiti, where we could even see some isolated areas in western Haiti, over 16 inches of rainfall. The big story, though, is really Jamaica. This is an area that we are forecasting a widespread 20 to 40 inches of rainfall across central and eastern Jamaica. This is where very dangerous landslides are going to be in play as well throughout tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday. This is going to be an ongoing situation. We could even see some isolated areas of over 40 inches of rain in Jamaica. But at this point, I really don't know what else to say here for Jamaica. Just make sure if you are in this area that you are taking this hurricane seriously. If you've not already, get away from the ocean. If you're in an area that is prone to significant flooding, try to get somewhere else, to maybe to higher ground or something like that, because again, this is just going to be a very dire situation, I think. Again, I've never seen anything like this. I'm very scared here for this area, and I truly think this will be the worst hurricane that we've ever seen in Jamaica for sure in our lifetime. So again, please take this seriously. Now, for those that are tuning in from the United States, I do have a quick update on our weather over the next 7 days. Not expecting anything major. However, there will be a big storm that forms as we go into late Tuesday and Wednesday across the Ohio Valley, mainly with some showers, some isolated thunderstorms. The bigger story will be the cold air behind it, with temperatures dropping by as much as 20 to 30 degrees in some areas. And then by the weekend, things are going to be pretty quiet across much of the lower 48. I don't see any big storm systems on the near horizon across the United States. Now, if you're along the Gulf Coast or in the southeast, get ready for some of the coldest weather that we have seen in months. We are talking about a really intense shot of cold air as we go into early Wednesday and Thursday. Across the southern plains in the southeast, this is going to drop temperatures substantially. These are the temperatures that you could wake up to Thursday morning, with temperatures in the low 30s and upper 20s all the way as far south as the Texas Panhandle, and even down towards the Gulf Coast in Florida. There will be areas down near the low 40s. So again, get ready for the coldest weather that we've seen in months. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We may go live later today for live coverage on Melissa, so click the bell icon so you're notified if we do go live, and we will see you all again in the next video or live stream. Stay safe, Jamaica.